Welcome to 3 on the Ones and Twos with your hosts, Tom, Cassie, and James. Just 3 old friends talking about their favorite records. Think of it as the coolest book club for music nerds.
Man, good evening. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
You beautiful cucumbers. We got guests in the house visiting.
Happy episode 51.
Who I know that when they come to town and they get to play shows, it's just as much as a special thing for them too, because they get away from the madness in their lives. And they get to play music, and then I know for me,
Get to see some old friends.
yeah, and we get to dance and celebrate you guys. So
Hooray.
thank you
We
so
get to
much.
dance.
Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Yeah,
Cheers,
man.
y'all.
Everybody.
Nothing but love. We're at the Starboard tonight, and we will be dancing. You got that right, to Judy Chicago later. James Joyce really is the curator of this, and nothing but love and respect with the show. When someone comes with an idea, we just go with it and say,
Yep.
yeah, let's do this. So I'm going to pass the mic to him. He's going to introduce these beautiful men, these beautiful humans, and let's get into it. Let's talk about good stuff.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
These are my brothers. I have known them for many years, probably 15 years at this point.
Please. Yeah.
When I was in a band called Nuttah, we used to play with the 2 guys in a band called Judy Chicago.
Yeah.
And they were weird, and they were super fun. They were our buddy band. Every band needs a buddy band.
Your label, like your stage mates. You know?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
at least when the 2 bands are playing together, at least the other band is watching you
Right.
play.
We knew it would be a good
With
time.
nobody, and we know we're like-minded, and I play drums, and I can play drums very well to electronic music, and it was a great fit, and so I started playing with
Better
you guys.
than anyone I've ever met.
Who played drums for Judy Chicago before James?
That's-
We didn't
they
have one.
You didn't have one.
He
Yeah.
created the job himself. He said,
did. He
"Hey,
started-
you guys
he started
are electronic-
sitting in."
You guys are electronic drums, but let me add to that." And he is. He's an amazing drummer, an
Yeah.
amazing human, and I think I maybe saw you guys once without you.
Right.
Now
right.
I can't picture you guys.
Well, that was the
without
thing. Is
you.
it's a Pandora's box.
Yeah,
Once
yeah.
I started playing,
Because you would sit on like 1 or 2 tunes.
Yeah.
when
Right,
you were
right,
playing
right.
with
Just
new-
Because I
get
saw you guys
bigger and
like,
bigger,
back in the day.
but-
Totally.
What's also fascinating is that we have a lot of common musical interests, but then we also have I was exposed to a lot of new music through you guys, a lot of electronic
That's the
music, a
best.
lot of
I mean, hanging out
interesting
with you
music
guys
from
is
the
always an
UK,
education.
a lot of prog, a lot of everything. And so musically, my tastes have grown and expanded through hanging out with you guys for so many years.
And isn't that the best thing ever? It's like, I love the idea of like, I think I have, pretty good taste in music, and I love music so much. It takes up my whole life, But I love the idea that I don't know all of it, and someone might be like, have you heard this new band? Or have you heard this band that's 37 years old, but it's new to you? And I'm like, what? It's the best thing ever,
This is one of the most unique picks we've had so far.
Before we get that,
Hands down.
for the audio only, especially for the names of the 2 other members of Judy Chicago.
Oh yes, so Ben Coleman,
Hello.
whose episode is his episode, his pick,
This is Ben's
and
pick.
and Travis Thatcher.
Hi, Travis.
Oh, hello.
Hugs. Right? For those on audio right now, Tom and Travis are
We're hugging.
So this is Ben's pick. Ben,
This is my pick, Jungle Mania 2.
awesome, incredible.
Yeah, we have do you have the fake version that we can
I
show?
have I did make a
So,
fake.
It's the real.
It looks
My-
fantastic.
yeah.
I'm
I
drooling.
love that you
Even
have the
did
back, too.
I mean,
Yeah.
come
You've
on.
like
I'm
created.
drooling just looking at it.
It's
Cassie just got a raise.
Awesome.
She did a great job with it.
I made my fake LP. Because
that
it
up
is
there
really
on
hard
display.
to come by, because Jungle is mainly, it's mainly a UK thing, right?
Yeah.
It never really caught on too much here.
No, it was
In
a slow.
New York-
It was a
New
slow
York for
burner.
that, Yeah.
Well, this is
Yeah.
part of it. This is part of what drove my choice, is that I wanted to kind of invert the idea of the classic album, because this scene, I think one of the reasons it never really made it over here is because it wasn't an album genre. Most of the big albums in Jungle are shit, to be frank.
Right, okay.
They're ponderous affairs, and it comes after this initial rush of Jungle, which was a single-based scene.
Yeah,
so.
it is, and it's
point.
very similar to kind of like the ska scene in Jamaica when it was first starting, because a lot of it's based on the immigrants that moved to the UK after the Second World War.
Yep.
So it was really interesting to find out that people and the equipment was relatively inexpensive, so people could make a song in the morning, and then I guess they're called dub plates. That they could put it out, and then it could be played in a club later that evening. I mean, they didn't last long, but I think that's one of the most, because it's kind of similar to that genre, like the ska genre, because the youth that had no outlet, they were able to actually put out music.
It comes definitely. There's an element of sound system culture, and what came out of this is like the kids of the parents who moved from Jamaica to the UK. Yeah. I also think it's very similar to post-punk. Because it was fiercely independent.
It was so DIY, right?
Yeah, and so you'd have the same people who would be running the record shops, printing up the records, working the pirate radio stations that would, and promoting the events.
Basement.
Yeah. So even though this was, I think, like distributed by Telstar, so this would have been like a big Christmas stocking. It was on TV, advertised on TV.
That was
in my research, I didn't know exactly, because usually I have a record and I have an artist that I can hone in on, and Jungle. Okay, I fell in love with it, but I didn't know too much about it before this. So I looked up like the label, and I found out that like the label started in the 80s, but they got a grant of like 120,000 pounds to start the label, and that was impressive to me, because you don't really have that kind of thing in the U.S. Like we might have grants that we, I don't know.
We're trying to get a grant right now for 3 other ones and twos.
But sure. Like we just don't have grants. But I thought that was notable, that I think like the whole culture is like a DIY, and then that there was a label that was started. I mean, I think like in the UK, you kind of have a little bit more, I don't know, emphasis on the arts, or maybe that...
Well, that's really interesting to me, because I've never heard that story, and I'm not sure if we're talking about the label that distributed this, or the promoters who put the collection together. So Telstar, they were literally like...
They're like K-Tel.
Yeah, they were like K-Tel. It was like the great, 20 new wave hits.
Okay, so
that's what I
call
that's what I call Jungle. Here we go.
All Telstar did was just make compilations.
Yeah, so what you've got here actually is that Jungle Mania were a bunch of gig promoters who put together some of the best jungle nights in London. So they kind of represent a cadre of hustling young people who also are making the records. And they've just done a distribution deal with Telstar to get this out and get it on TV, because this blew the fuck up in 94.
For sure, because this came out in 94, and that was right around the time people really realized that you could make money off of it. That it's such a big thing, and all the kids were into it. But at first, people just kind of dismissed it, because it's like, it's a new thing, you can't make money off of it. But once you can make money off of it, they realized how big it was.
It was a racist thing too, as well. It was a very multicultural scene, but from the start, people said that the jungle scene was dangerous.
They did, didn't they?
So there was a big element of that in it, and off the wake of the rave scene, which was obviously a huge money maker, this is really kind of like the spawn. I think of this as like a combination of rave and hip-hop and dancehall reggae.
Yeah.
That's the elements to this scene.
Totally
but
hear that.
Rave was very white by comparison, and the very multicultural nature, which again fits into the fact, was like everyone in these tower blocks in East London who were making this stuff, that meant that people were a little bit more afraid of the music too. And there was some bullshit about people talking about crack and stabbings, and it was kind of garbage.
It's got energy that,
There's an element of danger to it, but I love that.
It's aggro.
It's really aggressive.
So what they did was, so I'm going to talk about, because this is, I knew nothing about this, and then I studied and I learned about the amen break.
Yeah.
Like that, because I had never heard anything about that, and I'm not a musician, so I thought this was so fascinating.
But did you go, I've heard that everywhere in advertising and...
The tails.
I did, once I looked up...
Straight out Compton.
Once I looked up, but once I looked up, what the amen break was, because I saw that written, and I was like, I have no idea what that is. So I listened to the song by the Winstons that it's taken from, which is an incredible song.
Which is a cover of a Curtis Mayfield track.
It's
an instrumental cover of Amen Brother by the Impressions.
Amen. Holy shit, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's crazy. It goes back to Curtis Mayfield.
Everything goes back to Curtis Mayfield.
Because the Winstons were actually on his label. They were on Curtin. Yeah.
But I thought, so what they did was, so they started using that one a lot in samples, just because the drum solo is just right in the middle, and it's just so easy to just suck out and use. But then once samplers became more evolved, they took it and they spliced every single every single hit of the drum, like every hi-hat, every cymbal. And then jungle is, from what I read and like this little YouTube clip that I watched that went through the evolution, jungle is mostly the amen break reconfigured. Like it's taken like each note stretch.
It's not that simple. It's very much like hip hop. It's just really fucking fast hip hop. So you've got like a lot of the aesthetics of rave. Hip hop was huge in the UK, but we weren't very good at it. So I think we took the technology and we used the same building blocks. So it's also a lot of hip hop breaks records. Like you hear the Think break, the James Brown break is in throughout. You'll hear the same breaks, but they were like, this is basically music made out of music. It's just like hip hop. It's faster, and it's when they fuse it with the halftime bass lines of dub. That's when you've got jungle. That's the difference.
And it's really extreme as far as like very slow and very fast, sort of simultaneously going. That gives it this weird vibe to it. But I'm sure it's really exciting. Well, like I can imagine as a 18-year-old you would have been maybe.
Oh no, I mean, when this came out, I was 15.
15, okay. Yeah. So you're still very.
So you went.
This is like your Black Flag.
This is your Sex Pistols.
This
is
it's so fast, but it gets you, and so it's like you don't know how to dance to it, but you don't even care because you know it doesn't even matter. It makes you want to move so much that you don't
Scott
even
Morris
care that you're
to
just
put that
flopping
on,
around,
basically.
And, you know? Because it really does. And I think it might be the fast beats, and then it doesn't really have any steady, but it gets you, and you just can't help it.
Totally. But hearing it through a system too, like we had when we were early, 15 years ago, I had this shitty panel van that had computer speakers wired in.
Yeah.
And I just had this jungle mix on repeat, and we would drive around on tour, and it was like we only got half the music. Like, you gotta go out here and hear it. Like, really, it was like a tinny little.
Big time,
Yeah, car systems were really big at this time too. So you'd get rattling cars.
I had a question, and it's like it's this naive thing, but it's like this is what we do. Like so when they saw this time to make money, what do they do when they put out an album? They put out one good song and then 10 horrible songs. Like talk about because like this being the last of the great of it. You know
this was a dub plate scene, so just the same as rave. It's all about 12-inch records,
that's it.
And
like 9-minute jams and stuff.
So you don't even have album artists until Goldie comes along, really, and he's the guy who changes the script.
He's wonderful.
He's all right. I mean, again, his singles are his best shit. That's the thing. And
well, actually, I'm probably more a fan of his personality. I like a few of his songs.
He made some
bangers.
Amazing hardcore, some amazing rave.
I was watching something with him just the other day in an interview, and he's a fascinating personality.
I have no idea who
you listen to. So he did an album called Timeless.
Is awesome.
He did an album called Timeless, and he was really into like Pat Metheny and shit like that. And that's when you start to get into drum and bass. So
but he approached it in a punk way, though.
Instead of hardcore, you start to get like live instruments and there's fucking jazzy saxophones.
I didn't mean to open up this. Sorry, guys.
It's different in this genre that we're talking about, like hardcore.
Sonically.
Is it right? Well, it is because when you hear in the US,
what it is
you say
working class kids in pursuit of intensity. So it's basically the same.
The clarification between hardcore what UK means in the UK versus hardcore in the US.
Yeah, so hardcore is like hardcore is like the bastard, nasty child of acid house. Okay. So it's like faster, it's stupider, it's more intense, and it's also hardcore is a term you often think of as like the Dutch stuff. So the really fucking intense, like so hardcore is like the absolute opposite of like.
I like it.
Yeah, it's the opposite of jazzy drum and bass. It is just like let's see how fucking
far we can take it. Very cerebral and very like almost like new agey sounding.
Is it true?
And that's the last thing you want.
Like trip hop and shit like that.
Is it true that drum and bass is like the evolution of jungle, but without the Caribbean? You're like, no, I didn't even remember.
No, because even the word evolution implies that it's more sophisticated than it, which it's not.
No. But I think it's just it doesn't contain the Caribbean, like it doesn't contain like the reggae and the dub and much.
Actually, most of the pioneers in what you might call drum and bass were like black kids of Caribbean immigrants. The interesting thing is they kind of coexisted. So people like LTJ Bookham, who's totally like, he's the king of that like fusion-y, jazzy, intelligent drum and bass.
And like one of the biggest names that Americans would know.
Yeah, he's putting records out in '93, so it kind of coexisted. You know, there was already different flavors of it between the kind of like the stuff for the chin strokers and then the like hardcore let's have it.
I think that this is one of my favorites that we've done because it's not. This is unlike any other episode we've done, and also for most of the people that watch our show or listen to our show now, like they're people that currently are here. It's like it is such a it's such a foreign scene. Like it's so different there that from and so it's super fascinating to learn about like a.
I mean, you referenced the Clash. I know they're one of your favourite bands, if not the.
Yeah.
This is like the logical conclusion of what they did because it's like absorbing hip hop, absorbing.
If they never broke up, they would have probably had a record that kind of sounded like or Big Audio Dynamite or something, like.
And it really comes from more than anything just having your mind open to being angry, loving the right things, and being angry at the right things.
Yeah. But it is very much to me. It's like a punk scene where all the bands are putting out 7 inches, and no one comes up with an album for years because it's kind of invisible. It's not being noticed by the record
I'm so
labels.
Glad you brought this to because to our attention, to my attention, because the thing is like. Because our minds are sponges, and we constantly want to learn and hear more, whatever. But sometimes you need someone to say, "Hey, man, listen to this."
I gotta say that singles formats, just in general, are kind of impenetrable inherently, because you do not know. I mean, it's the same thing with punk singles.
Yeah.
Same thing with all of sort of 12 inches. Same with disco. Sometimes you're just. It's almost like. You need a Jungle Mania 2
you need
just to give you like a primer
through it.
of like
like this was in Woolworths. This was like really popular.
Well, also like you look at like
that was in the Christmas stock.
Like of the songs that you mostly wanted to talk about, like two of
you
them,
picked out certain ones that were like very special.
Right.
You gave me a list of like okay, all of these don't worry about. I want to talk about these.
Okay.
10.
But the ones that you picked out, I mean, which makes me think that most of these probably are. I mean, in my research, not listening to this, just researching, like they were the hits. Like these were the people. But it wasn't just the kids that are just like, hey, I'm gonna try my hand at this and put out like a dub plate or whatever.
Yeah.
These were like the ones that were played then, and like people were like, hell yeah, I want to listen to more of that. Like this is really
it's that idea. It's that idea of scenius, right? It's the idea that collectively, when everyone's working on something, you produce something that I think largely the idea of individual genius is kind of horseshit because no one lives in a bubble.
Right.
And this to me represents that. It's like when you've got this laser focus of all of these young artists who are just all trying to one up each other and trying to do the next new thing with the tech that they've got. And then you get this. It's just
like we were saying earlier today, like listening to they're all rehashing the same drum breaks, but they're like, all right, well that guy did this. Like how do I one up that? How do I like go deeper?
I see your ace of spades and I raise you with three hearts or whatever. That's wonderful.
When I was talking about the little video clip that I watched that was talking a lot about the Amen break, and they did play the Jeep commercial and they did play Straight Outta Compton, and like so that you could really get it. The evolution, like the point that he was trying to get across, maybe I should post it or share it because at the end, the point he was really trying to get across was that once people like license holders, like the Winstons never got a dime for any, and then once license holders started realizing that there was money to be made, then they started cracking down, and you started getting like a lot of the new copyright laws and stuff
it's
like that.
Hip hop.
And what his point was kind of that. Copyright laws and like keeping people from using your stuff to reconfigure or create new art is actually, it's not good for the evolution of art. Like it's actually like a hindrance of, and so I don't remember what
there is actually there's a tune on here. I think The Burial is on this. It might not be actually, but that one comes to mind as a song that was a surprise hit, and it had a sample from like a Tina Moore track. It was like basically if any single came out with an a cappella on it, you'd get the vocal on a record because they were hungry for stuff.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And when it became a surprise hit, the guy who did it Ray Keith, I think it was. The artist was Leviticus. He just got his sister to re-sing the vocals so he wouldn't get sued.
He's like, so let me reimagine.
And it's amazing because it does just sound like a 16-year-old girl from East London doing it instead, and it makes it better.
Well, they were just saying, like, and part of it, like, his whole point, like I said, came down to that. But it was interesting watching the evolution because he was just like, people, like the copyright laws didn't evolve as fast as what people were using, and then so it took people this amount of time. So it's like you couldn't really have as free of, you know, like a jungle scene now because they so cracked down on.
So here's the trick, right? Is that this represents the scene like coming out of the underground, and very, very quickly the people who were doing this were like, fuck this, and they went back under because if you're putting stuff out on white label, you're not going to get sued because you're selling records out of the back of a van.
In front of a store.
That's what they were doing, and they were making good money too. But it was a very, very DIY. So no one's going to find you. Everyone's recording stuff under pseudonyms.
I love it, man.
So it's the reason why, with the exception of things like this, you can't find a lot of jungle on things like Spotify because it's on YouTube maybe.
I tried to make a Spotify version and it was only like
half
a couple of,
and these were the hits. That's the thing. Like it's really
that was crazy to me.
It reminds me of like Studio One meets the Bomb Squad. It's like, and I have two things I'm huge fans of.
You will hear a lot of It Takes a Nation of Millions to hold us back on these records all the time.
And it's like, it's exactly right. It's like everyone wants to like feel like they're part of something. Like the best feeling in the world is joining like a parade or a riot for a good reason, and that's what it makes me feel like.
Yeah,
it's so awesome.
So were you, as a 15-year-old Ben Coleman in London, listening to Jungle Mania? How was Jungle Mania 1, by the way? I don't know.
Oh, it's great, but it's only a single. I mean, this to me is like the apex. This
I
is
love
like
that
amazing.
it's Jungle Mania 2.
Christmas stocking.
This is
it's like Grand Theft Auto 2 or something. You know, like it has this like look to it.
Game changer.
It could be a video game. It could be a crazy compilation. Who knows? But as a 15-year-old, you and your friends.
I'm probably listening to more Stereolab than I am Jungle, to be honest. But
right.
It was all, we were all swimming in it. So
it's just.
You mean back then you were listening more Stereolab than you were this, but you had so much fun with this. Like it's such a fun music, and I can only imagine that if you were there at the time when it was the big underground thing, and that you could like get with your friends and you'd be like, this is underground and it's cool as shit, and you can go and just dance and just flail.
It was honestly the pirate stations for me, because you could switch on your radio and just cruise around, and pretty soon you'd find a station, and we had some in my area. But yeah, that was huge. So they were just 24/7. You'd be able to find a pirate somewhere.
Because I've heard of pirate stations, but I never really 100% understood what they were. But it's because we don't.
That's a whole other episode.
But it is the same.
It is, but it's what created and spread this.
Sustained the scene, because you would have heard about the Jungle Mania club nights. You'd have heard about the compilations coming out. The same DJs on the shows would have been the people working in the record shops.
Yep.
Right,
it was all the same folks. Yeah. So basically, you stick an aerial on top of a tower block as high as you can get, and you do it until the police show up.
Until they find the antenna and figure out where the cable's going to.
Yeah, they would first they started like doing it on the ships off the coast, and then they started just doing it like in the city, and they would just like sometimes just like marginally evade the cops while they were, which is kind of like the first rave that I ever went to, which is kind of like the same thing. It's like, and I think that's the whole point, right?
Yeah,
like,
the genesis of pirate radio outside of that initial rush in the 60s, which is because the establishment of the BBC was so restrictive and wouldn't play pop music.
Right.
That was just a burgeoning youth who wanted to hear those records, you know? In the 80s, it was, again, it's going back to the sound system culture. The radio stations, the commercial stations and the BBC wouldn't play black music. So you get these London stations that play funk and soul and like the rare groove shit that's coming out. And then you've also got stations playing just reggae. There's an amazing station that was called I think it was the Dread Broadcasting Company.
Well, there was some time after this started getting big, right? That
the
one of the
DBC.
stations created a show.
I mean, we need to make DBC shirts.
You can get them still.
But at one point, I'm sure it was once they started realizing that it was. I mean, everything really has to do with money. You know, when you get like big corporate, like radio stations.
Unless it's the BBC, because they're taxpayer funded.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But then why were they? Because at some point, it wasn't until they started getting, until Jungle started getting really big, that the BBC did create. Before that, it was like there was one other station that it was actually formulated just to do this.
We can say here.
And then BBC's
it says, check out for more Jungle Mania. Check Jumping Jack Frost, Groove Rider, Randall, and Hype on Wednesday 9 till 11 on Kiss 100 London. And Kiss was a pirate station
Let's check
in the
it out.
80s.
Yeah. Maybe it's still going.
Who got a license.
I got some Sky
You
Miles
can find these recordings and
So
stuff
yeah, Kiss did it
online
first,
of,
and then
like,
BBC did it, and they
And
got
then
Groove
BBC
Rider
came
in, and they
out,
did
okay.
one in the jungle,
Yeah.
which is like
People going
95, I
then
think.
Shout out, people call in, like shout out to so and so. It's your birthday Thursday night.
Well, it's also like the
that's how it was.
hip hop stations
That's how it
in
was
New York.
In New York.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
97 you know, on WBLS and Kiss FM, and even when the Clash were living in New York and they were trying to do Magnificent Seven, they were just taking it all in, embracing it. And, and like everything was, it's like all shout outs, and I grew up to that and New Wave, you know, and but it was like such a really lucky way to grow up, you know what I mean? Because like you just like, you know, you hear it Sucker MCs, and then you hear it Magnificent Seven, and you're like, you know,
They're very close parallels, do you know what I mean? The same kind of thing, like it's entirely London or entirely New York.
Yeah, and it's like that's when you realize, you know, hey man, I'm lucky to be alive at this time right now. Yeah.
Well, thanks for this album.
Well,
I want to any like
the favorites.
any other thoughts we need to cover before?
Yeah, so we were talking about those different strains. You actually get it all here because it starts off with some kind of like more of the ragga influence, like proper jungle stuff. So like the Conquering Lion track, the Code Red track is a really great ragga inflected. The New Blood track, Worries in the Dance, for me, that's a really good example of the hybridity of the scene.
Okay.
Worries in the Dance, that's a mixture of like, it's got the sounds of live sound clash tapes from live sound system clashes. It's got a Mary J. Blige a cappella. It's got the drums, it's got the think break in there for sure. You'll always hear a little sped up James Brown.
Yeah, you always hear that funky drummer and everything. Like the whole thing, yeah.
But then you've also got the jazzy stuff. So when you're getting to the end of disc one here, things like Foul Play, Being With You, Nookie, Only You, Horny Mutant Jazz by T-Power. This stuff is getting more into the intelligent scene, and it gets a little bit more laid back and a bit more of a rolling kind of vibe.
It's rounded off a bit.
I like the real. I think.
She likes the
so
hard
my
stuff,
favorites out of like your favorite, like the one that you picked, I'll say like Calling the People.
That's so fun.
Yeah, I mean, the ones
the
that
reggae
really,
is strong
really
in
did
that
make
one.
Me, and I love old Jamaican like ska and reggae. So
Cassie's
definitely
wheelhouse
like,
is all like
Jamaican
60s,
music is gonna be like
60s reggae and ska,
Well,
and so this definitely like scratches
Yeah.
an itch like in these other space.
What's the one which is just like roll the bass? I love that one.
That's
I mean, listen, we rolled up.
That's DJ Hype.
We rolled up here, rolled up heavy, blasting it. You know.
Roll the bass.
And that's it is. It's not music that you want in the background. You want it.
Roll the beat.
So like
DJ Hype.
James
Where is it?
Taylor or Johnny Cash, brilliant artists. Even like slow James Brown stuff.
DJ
Hype. On volume
so he's also
but
Cool Hand
Brown
Flex.
stuff needs to be on volume 13.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
So yeah, Hype has got 2 different tunes on here under 2 different names.
Seriously.
And again, this is all that scene. Yeah, they would just put out different pseudonyms.
That's what I was going to ask. So a lot of it is it's similar, like guys collaborate on stuff and on the comp?
Or was it more solo?
Normally it's solo stuff, but there were a lot of collaborations at that time as well.
Yeah, because all these are like somebody, or not all, featuring somebody.
That's the dancehall stuff
like
normally.
Competition's healthy, but also you want to see your brother, your peer, like kill it and be like, okay, well I just killed it on this. Let me kill it with you on this.
Yeah, that's like. That's basically like producer and vocalist almost always. When you see a featuring, that's probably the vocal. That's the vocal
Berlin,
turn.
Right.
The featuring is the vocal, and then the
Take my breath
person put it out
away.
is the producer that actually like probably.
Yeah. So like at this time, the 2 big breakout hits for the jungle scene was
Levy run,
incredible.
right?
And then UK Apachi and Shy FX original Nuttah, which I think is on Jungle Mania 1.
Yeah,
those were the 2.
Nuttah isn't on here, but so.
Which I'm sure we'll hear later.
So General Levy,
So excited.
he said that like he thought that like this was he later said that it wasn't, he didn't mean it that way, but like he was kind of like saying like that song pretty much made the whole jungle thing, right?
Yeah, so he hit a problem because he came out claiming when that song was a hit that he was the king of jungle, and there was a very cliquey set of DJs who thought that they really had
like
built that scene.
The Jungle Committee or something like
that?
Yeah,
it's kind of weird, but yeah, so like Groove Rider and Fabio and a lot of these guys, maybe Goldie too, they all like, no, you're fucking not the king of jungle, so they all refused to play the record. And kind of shut him down, so he disappeared after that.
Really?
So you don't want to take too much credit.
Yeah,
No, yeah.
listen, be humble in the jungle. Be humble in the jungle.
That's funny, you see. That's a tricky quote. He did.
Did he really?
He did a song dissing Goldie, where he said, "As long as you're humble, they'll let you be the king of jungle."
Tricky as well, man.
Yeah, that was after Björk had left Tricky and gone to date Goldie.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. As Andre Three Stack says, Björk, she hung out with some crazy dudes. But like, I love a lot of things both those guys have done. But like, yeah, man, don't ever claim you're the king, ever, man.
It was just braggadocio.
King Tommy never said he was the king.
Right.
You know
he was but he was like a dancehall vocalist, and those guys had just swagger to the max.
Those guys were like revolutionary to it, and they were offended.
Yeah. I mean, it is true, like, in a way, without those vocalists. I mean, UK Apache is a really interesting one, too, with the original Nuttah guy, because he, I think, he was like Armenian or something. But again, like, that's how, like, multiracial the scene was. It's very, very mixed race. So, like, the black scene of London was really big, but it was super, super broad. It was really just all these kids in these areas doing what they could with what they could get their hands on.
Because it's all British Empire sort of like, obviously multicultural, as opposed to, the United States, where it can, it is obviously very multicultural, but like.
But the thing is, it comes down to even like what we talk about in every episode of the show. It's like 100%. It's just punk. It's all punk.
It's the same ethos. Like
I don't care if
DIY.
it's a Jungle or NWA or Merle Haggard or a Mikey Dread or Sex Pistols. If it's from the gutter and it's honest, it's punk. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, right? I think that's the way I've always felt.
Yeah.
Like it needs to be like the gutter and the crotch and the heart. You know what I'm saying? Like everything.
Well, and the brain. I mean, these kids.
And the brain.
These kids were doing things with samplers, and I mean, nowadays it doesn't. If you're a nerd and into production, as I am, and band and like our friends, but like you could do it on an iPhone. Yeah. And it's like, I made a thing that makes drum.
But they will work.
But like the actual workflow to make any of this shit happen is insane. Yeah. Like the hours of not even computers. If you've ever tried to use a fax machine, that's kind of like programming a sampler.
It's just like they were just really they were hustling. Like they were really
amazing.
just.
Try to get online when you forgot your password.
Like they were
there, you know what I'm saying?
I mean, they put their heart and soul into it, and just like
it's so good.
Doing everything. I mean, I love that you picked this. I love that it's parallel to the #1 genre that I love.
Sure.
There's a lot of similarities to like Studio One and stuff.
It took a lot of Jamaicans by surprise, I think, and it's interesting the way that labels like Greensleeves tried to get involved with it.
Yeah, how was it accepted in Jamaica is the question.
I think with curiosity, but dancehall was so big, they weren't that.
Just ruled, they're just like, it's weird.
It didn't go the other way, but a lot of those artists, when they were like, wait, what, you sampled me on a record and it's in the top 10. So like a lot of those vocalists did come over and do PAs. And so it certainly didn't hurt. That music was kind of synonymous with being a gangster in the
New
UK.
York and Jamaica. I don't know about LA at that time, whatever. I can't even imagine it but that's another story. But like, I think for a minute, unfortunately, it was just like a fad.
Yeah, like Greensleeves put out a jungle album, but it wasn't very good. Right. It really was such a outside of London, it didn't really make sense.
Right. Well, listen, unless you're open-minded and you understand all of it, like, I mean, none of it's going to make sense. I mean, at all.
But really, truly, thank you for this. I wanted to. It was amazing.
I'm going to be listening to that. Like,
next level.
Rock it. Keep it in the car, CD player.
Awesome,
I had so much fun.
Someone's uploaded the whole thing to YouTube. So if you're listening to this, or
There is
watching.
some great jungle
close
on
the link.
YouTube, for
Thank
sure.
you so
yeah.
much, man.
Yeah, totally. And it's a wormhole because, like I said, I mean, there's years of great drum and bass on YouTube that never really saw a
I know
release
what I'm
beyond a
doing
white
this
label.
weekend.
So
Like seriously,
Just
100
making, like,
hours later, be
yeah,
pissed
100
off.
hours.
just don't start collecting it because you'd be fucked. It's like it's so expensive now. It's so collectible.
It's like skinhead reggae and punk records. Well,
Yeah.
maybe times 3. It's like it's like
So
yeah.
obscure,
It's
so
hard to come by,
limited.
really hard to come by.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's so
Yeah.
good, man. And I'm so glad that we pulled up in the rain blasting it. Like that's the way to do it. Like driving up here, it's really
Nice.
Well, cheers. Thank you.
Man.
Thanks everyone. Thanks for
Cheers,
talking
thank
about
you.
jungle.
Thanks
Thanks
again,
to
Star
everyone.
Bar.
Thanks to the
And
Star
thank you
Bar.
for
This is the
having
Star
us.
Bar for having.
Star Bar,
Yeah.
and you guys come down. Well, this is gonna air later. But Judy Chicago, we're gonna be shaking our crotches.
Cheers.
Obviously, you see nothing. He waves his wand and turns everything into nothing.